This is how to create pulse and feel, lesson module 3, consistent subdivisions discussion. We spoke about subdivisions in the developing timekeeping lesson modules, and they're extremely important in understanding how to create a pulse in what we're doing in the band and the audience. A pulse is much different than timekeeping, and some of the things we've been talking about in these creating pulse discussions will help create a pulse in what you're doing. Dynamics, the bouncing ball effect, the consistency of time, and subdivisions in what we're doing with those play a big role in creating a nice, consistent, good feeling pulse. The first thing that we want to talk about in the consistent subdivisions discussion is focusing on the minute parts of the beats that we're playing. One of the most common things that I hear happen in guys playing is that the big parts of the beat, the hi-hat, the bass drum, the backbeat, they're all locked in real nice and tight with the subdivisions, and their timekeeping's on, and they can keep time real good and just kind of flows along. It's good, but there's this little sort of odd, unsettling effect in what's going on. And most of the time, it's due to what's happening on their snare drum hand during the beats in small, minute points, like ghost notes, diddles. The same thing in the riding hand. When we're playing a riding pattern, maybe the big parts, the eighth note parts or the downbeat parts are fine, but the little minute parts in between, the subdivisions of it, are not. So let me give you an example of this. This is something that I hear a lot. I'm going to put on an eighth note click. If we play a ghost note pattern on the snare drum, I'm going to play it correctly first, and then I'm going to play it incorrectly, and you're going to see what happens to the feel, the pulse of it. So I'm going to play this pattern. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1 and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1 and 2E. Now, I'm going to play it incorrectly. Correct it. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1. What's happening there? Basically, the bulk of what I'm doing is correct. The hi-hat is fine. The backbeat is even fine. The bouncing ball effect of it is pretty reasonable. What's happening is I'm rushing the diddles in my snare drum hand. A diddle is two notes with the same limb. So this happens a lot. It happens a lot on the bass drum, and it happens a lot with your snare drum hand. A lot of guys I would hear just dribble them. And that's really tough, because that's rushing it, and it's just not very clean sounding. I'm not saying that a beat or some beat might not have that crushed diddle sound to it, but generally speaking, it was guys not being articulate and consistent with the subdivisions inside of those minute parts of the beat. Now this really happens a lot on the bass drum. And what the outcome of this discussion is to correct the weave again and keep our pulse nice and consistent. What happens is, if you're not really focused on the pulse locking in, our bouncing ball effect, our time and our subdivisions going by, rushing a diddle like that, even on the foot, can pull the downbeat early. And I'll give you an example. If I play on the bass drum, I'll do this little demonstration on the bass drum, and I'm going to play it correctly and then incorrectly. So I'm going to play just the and of like 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4. And then I'm going to rush it. I'll show you what happens. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. Now, if I rush it, see what happens? My backbeat on the snare drum comes in a little early. 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a, correct it? 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. Now rush it. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a. It's kind of subconscious in a way. You know that after that second beat on the bass drum, this hand's supposed to play. So when your bass drum leg goes, I feel like rushing right now, this comes down early. Thus, the whole beat rushes into that backbeat on 4 a little bit, and that's creating a weave. It's breaking our pulse. So we need to put on our consistent subdivisions. We'll put 16th notes on now. And that's going to show us exactly where to lock in those two beats. But we're really needing to focus on the minute parts of what we're doing in the ghost notes and the kick drum pattern. So let me play those two patterns, 1E and 2E and a 3E and 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 4. And let me play them correct here real quick with the click and then show you just how to practice that. So I like to solo each instrument out when I'm practicing it. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E. There's a lot of things happening there. I'm playing a consistent subdivision with my riding hand, making sure my backbeat's laying in the same spot, but I'm really focused on the consistency of the subdivisions and the minute parts and trying to really lock them in with one another. And when you see me solo the things out, and I play maybe just the hi-hat snare drum in 16th notes, and then I'm really focusing on the lineup. And we spoke about that in the developing timekeeping section, lesson modules as well, because we need that stuff to line up. If it lines up perfectly, sometimes this hand, my snare drum hand, will force the bass drum into subdivision, because in the purposes of lining up with each other, it's going to clean it up and really force it into the 16th note flow. Okay, so this is really important that you work on this with the subdivided click. You look at the parts and the patterns that you're playing in the specific beats and go through them with the subdivided click, focusing on those small parts, not rushing them, and making sure they're lining up. And this is a key component in making sure that our pulse has a nice, relaxed, consistent feel to it. So I'm going to perform this exercise, and what I'm going to try to do is work on playing diddles with the different limbs and not rushing them. Just playing diddles with each hand, meaning 2 notes with one limb, 2 notes with one limb, 2 notes with one limb, moving them around the kit a little bit and focusing on keeping them nice and open and a consistent flow of subdivisions happening in all the different dynamic interplays of notes, but especially the small ones. So here's a little performance of working on this exercise of diddles in consistent subdivisions. 1, 2, and a 3, and a 4.